Thank you. So tonight we have the wonderful Chris Hoehle demonstrating for us. Yay! He is an instructor at the Denver Tool Library. He's also done multiple week-long classes at Aeromont, and he was a regional demonstrator at the Rocky Mountain Woodturning Symposium last year. So we are very excited to have him teach for us again. He's an excellent instructor, and tonight he will be showing us a shallow bowl with an Ogee shape and form to it. So I'm really excited for his demo. If he's got some time, he'll talk a little bit about the coloring on the bowl, but we're not sure if there'll be enough time for that. So I'll give it up to Chris.
All right. Well, thanks, Jessica, and thanks everyone for having me out here. Like Jessica was saying, I'm going to be demonstrating this Ogee form tonight, which the Ogee, spelled O-G-E-E, is a term that we borrow from architecture. It just refers to simply that we have this, curve coming along here in a convex fashion. When we switch to concave real quick, give you that nice outflowing rim. It's a great way to make good use of some of your thinner pieces of wood. You can see what I'm going to use tonight. It's just pieces of 8-quarter curly maple, so it's a great way to use those up. I did like a little drawing of the side profile up on the board here that you're going to see. Again, a convex transitioning into a concave surface, or an S-curve is another way to describe it. And then on the inside, we just do your typical bowl surface, just coming down there in a continuous curve from the rim down to the middle of the bowl. And that leaves us this nice wide rim on your Ogee bowl that I like to embellish with dyes in mine. This is multiple layers of the TransTint dye. We may or may not get to that. As I go through the turning, I'm going to be trying to explain quite a bit of what I'm doing as far as the cutting and everything goes, for the benefit of any beginners or intermediate turners in the audience. So we'll see if we get time for that or not. I have the materials in case we do, but yeah, we'll be talking about just good form and design principles and stuff like that as we go on through here too. And of course, let me know if you have any questions as we go along. I like to start my bowls just on a faceplate. So I'm going to go ahead and just put the faceplate on the lathe here. For people that haven't seen this before, the easiest way to get something on, whether it's a faceplate or a chuck or whatever, is hold on to your piece and then turn the hand wheel. That's a lot easier than coming up here and trying to do like this, and maybe you cross thread the piece or do something weird like that. But just get that on like that. Get your tool rest set up, of course. Always give it a test spin before you get going. Might go ahead and get my Woodturners smock on here. So before I do that, I'm wearing my Denver Tool Library shirt. Got some of my students out here from the Denver Tool Library, so it's fun to see some familiar faces out in the audience there. Oh yeah, here we go, Denver Tool Library. So if you enjoy the demo, I teach classes there. I do, I have a Woodturning 1, which is spindle turning, Woodturning 2, bowl turning, and then Woodturning 3 on lidded boxes. I do about 5 or 6 days a month. So if you're interested in any of those, just go to denvertoollibrary.org/classes. Would love to have you all out there. The classes are pretty much oriented for the complete beginner. That's kind of my emphasis there. I like to get new people started on wood turning, but I've had a lot of people, like more intermediate turners, come out and say that they got something out of it in terms of refining their technique and correcting bad habits and so on and so forth. So welcome you to come out and give that a try. So anyway, getting ready to go here. Got my the grind that I like to use is just your typical Ellsworth grind or side grind profile. I've got a 1/2-inch crown bowl gouge. I think these are this is what they call the 3/8 with the 1/2-inch bar stock. That's what I use for most bowls this size. And I'm just going to go ahead and go right into the shaping on this. I don't typically take the time to smooth out the side or anything. I'll just go right into developing the beginning profile of the Ogee. So we'll just go ahead and get right into that here. Just going to be using a pull cut, just coming right across here. And so some keys for the pull cut, and for gouge use in general. Like I said, I wanted to throw some tips in there that might be useful for the beginner, any intermediate wood turner, maybe even some of you that have been at it for a while. One of the keys to using any wood turning gouge, whether we're talking about a spindle gouge or a bull gouge or whatever, anything with kind of a swept back profile on it, you want to think about which way you're rolling the gouge. Whether I'm, in the case of this cut, I'm rolling it off to my left, or whether you're rolling it to your right. You think about which way you're going to roll it, and that gives you like what I would call a downhill wing and an uphill wing. So the sweet spot of the cut is always going to be what I refer to as just downhill of the tip. So in other words, if I'm rolling this gouge over like that, I'm trying to have the shaving come off just right where my thumb is there. What I refer to as just downhill of the tip. I'm going to draw that up on the board here too. So if we think of this as like kind of like a top view of the gouge here, we got the two wings coming back like that, going like that. There's your flute coming down. So if you envision like a line drawn down the center of the gouge like that, and I'm rolling the tool over to the left, sweet spot of the cut is just downhill of the tip. That's kind of a general concepts for how gouges work. I mean, or that's like the first part of success with this cut anyway. And I'll explain the next thing here in a second. But another thing that you'll see I'm doing is I've got the handle drop down way low. That should be giving me a pretty good surface right off the gouge here. Yeah, not bad. I mean, there's a little bit of tear out right there in that section. This is a figured piece of wood, and I'll tackle that as I get closer to the final shape by taking lighter passes and dropping the handle even more. But what that dropping the handle does, because I could also make this cut with the gouge kind of held more horizontal like that, the sweet spot of the cut would still be the same. But if I come across here like that, that's going to be more of a roughing cut as far as this goes, and that's going to give you a lot more tear out. So as I drop the handle, what that does is it takes the edge that we're cutting with, and instead of cutting at more of a horizontal like that, the edge comes up like that, and it's kind of coming across in a skew angle. So that's why I'm getting a real nice cut with this. So I'm just coming around there, kind of starting to already think about that Ogee profile where I'm coming around concave. And then I twist out into the convex. This is the part that in the demo description I said kind of reminds me a little bit of Tai Chi. I studied Tai Chi for about 13 years. And, a lot of people have heard about moving from the hips in wood turning. This is kind of no different, where I'm coming around here, and then you'll see me kind of unwind like that, so I'm just moving from the hips as I go through and do that. And you can see the Ogee profiles already starting to come in there, and I didn't have to smooth the side down at all. You can do that, if you're more of a beginner and it's useful for you to smooth the side down first, by all means do that. I found that once you get used to things for a while though, if you go right into making the form, that can often help people out in terms of getting a nice, more of a curvy profile. Because I think what happens, like when a lot of people wind up with more of like kind of the dog dish bowl profile, when we, have something that looks kind of like this, where you got like straight sides and stuff like that. I think that's largely a result of like spending a lot of time smoothing out the side and smoothing out the bottom, and then you're kind of afraid to do much more shaping from there. So if you, instead of doing that first, just go right into making your curve, I've found that for some people it can kind of get you to be a little more adventurous with your shapes and start developing better shapes. So the The second part of what makes this a good, successful cut here, we talked about the sweet spot of the cut being what I refer to as just downhill the tip there. The other thing is I am doing a bevel rubbing cut here. Sometimes people see this and think that it's not, but I'm gonna draw on the gouge here the part of the bevel that's actually rubbing. So if we look at the gouge like that, it's the side bevel here like that. That's what's actually rubbing when you're doing a nice successful pull cut. So if you put all those things together, rubbing the bevel right there, dropping the handle nice and low, and realizing that this here is where the sweet spot of your cut is, you can start getting like real nice surfaces with the pull cut. So keep going back to shaping here. This is a crown bowl gouge. I think it's in their Pro PM steel. I like to put them in my own handles. I like the handles a little bit longer than what they come with. Here's kind of the standard Crown Pro PM, and then like the handle I like to put them in. So if any of you want to know how to do your own handle, I think I did that as a demo for you all 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, it was Don and Larry and I were the only ones in the room. So it's fun to be back to that not being the case anymore. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with Don and Larry, but it's it's fun having the. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I won't argue with y'all then. So yeah. So anyway, just doing a little more shaping there. Before I get too carried away on the shape, I do have to go ahead and put my mortise in on the bottom. I'm going to put a mortise and a foot in on here. If I grab one of my other bowls here, since we are already working with a shallow piece of wood on most of these, I do go ahead and usually I just put a mortise in and then a foot around the mortise. Rather than trying to do a tenon and turn it off, because that would be losing another, 1/4 inch off of an already pretty shallow piece of wood. And the mortise is also really nice for these because with the die work that I do on these, if we get to that part of it, you'll see that what I do to build up that gradient effect is I'm going back and forth between, at least 3 different layers of die, and in some of these like up to 5 layers. And it's nice to be able to take these off, apply a layer of die, come over, sand it back, take it off, apply the next layer of die, and the mortise accommodates that real well. So that's what I'm going to do. Gotta get my chuck out that I'm going to use. Which for this one's going to be just one of these. This is the Vicmark VM120, the bigger of the two. Most common sizes that they have, and this is just the default jaws on there. And I've got these opened up to where they're, almost closed, but not quite. The key to getting a good grip on these, because I don't know if you noticed on my other bowl, I usually make my mortises pretty shallow as well to take advantage of, again, the thinner pieces of wood. You can't make a very deep mortise in there. You're going to be either making funnels or making pretty chunky bottoms. So the keys for getting a good hold with these, I would say in order of importance, number 1 is matching the true circle diameter of the chuck. Number 2 is making sure that you're bearing against the top surface of the jaws. And number 3 is the dovetail shape. And to be honest, on mortises, I don't even really worry about the dovetail. I just go for a nice, crisp 90-degree surface. That'll usually take care of it. But all that being said, that to me, the most important thing to pay attention to is getting these jaws to their true circle diameter. And what I mean by that for people that are new, I'll just go ahead and open these up here. You can see as I start to open these up, the thing that was a circle starts to distort. And, in theory, these jaws could grab a mortise that big, but it's only going to be making contact on the middle part of each jaw. Whereas if I close these down to where more like their ideal circle diameter is, which again is like almost closed but not quite. And the reason for that is these are machined on a metal lathe as one piece of metal and then cut into their 4 parts. And the little bit of opening there accounts for the part that we lost when we cut them into their 4 parts. So that's going to be the ideal circumference to use this particular set of jaws with. And then what I'm doing, I'm taking a set of dividers here like this, and you can see I'm winding it out to where those points are kind of giving me just right where I need to go there, getting that as close as I can. And then I'm going to use these to transfer the mark up to the bowl surface. Any questions about all that? That's kind of one of those things that, especially if you're new to this, there's a lot there that will influence how successful your bowl holding is or not. I'd say a lot of people, sometimes I find a lot of people aren't aware of that true circle diameter thing, and a lot of people aren't aware of the importance of the top surface of the jaws. We all focus on matching the dovetail profile and that sort of thing, and a lot of people ignore the great amount of holding power that comes from the bearing surface of the top of these jaws. So anyway, I got that all ready to go here. What I'm going to do, before I do this, if I needed to, I'd go ahead and level off the bottom at this point. I don't really think I necessarily have to on this blank. This was just like a piece of kiln-dried wood from Austin, and they always kind of skip plane their lumber a little bit. So it usually winds up being pretty flat anyway, but let's turn it on here and see. Yeah, it doesn't really look like it needs it, but I'm gonna go ahead and show this anyway. Just so that again, for somebody that's new and needs to see the complete process, maybe you're starting with a piece of wood that's a little bit wonkier and you need to level off the bottom. My favorite technique for doing that is making a series of cuts, kind of nibbling across the bottom. This would be, if I back up over here for a second, and let's pretend like I had done the thing on the side where I'm doing a push cut going up the side to level off that side there. The cut that I'm about to do is that exact same thing going in a series of little bites across the bottom. And a lot of times when I do this, people think that I'm moving the gouge across back and forth like that, but I'm not. It's a series of little nibbles going across the bottom. I'm just going to do real light ones because this blank doesn't really need it, and I don't want to lose a ton of wood. So we'll just go ahead and turn it on and do that. But just going in there, making a little bite, move over, make the next one. So again, the gouge isn't like, I'm not traversing that way and cutting that way. It's a series of bites going in that way. It's as though I was going to start here and do like a giant heroic push cut and like take an inch off that side. But then of course I don't do that. I'm just taking off a little just to level things down. And you can see how you can go across there in a little series of nibbles like that and then get something leveled off. Of course, if this were wonkier, you'd be taking bigger bites to level that off. And then as a final thing, you can turn this over and make a push cut going across the bottom. So again, thinking about what I talked about gouges earlier, we think about which way we're rolling the gouge. And so that sweet spot of the cut's always going to be just downhill of the tip there. That's where I want the shaving to come off. So I'm lining up on that, and I'm using the tip bevel this time to come across there is how that cut's working. And just coming across there like that will give us a nice little push cut to level off the bottom. Again, this piece of wood didn't really need this process at all. I think most of the time I wouldn't have done that, but just for the benefit of showing everybody in case you're starting off with a wonkier piece of wood than that for when you try this. So I'm going to move this over here now. I did, again, another useful tip for people that are just starting off. You always want your tool rest maybe a little bit below center so that when you put your gouge up there and do whatever cut you're doing, you're cutting across pretty much right on center. What I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my tool rest up a little bit from that position because now I'm going to use these dividers to transfer the mark, and I want to use these in the trailing mode just like you would a scraper. I want these to be held up a little bit, and this being the handle back here to be higher than where I'm going to cut with. And I think I'm going to take a little pencil here and just make a mark of where the middle is, just for both your benefit and mine, so we can line up with where we should be on the cut here. I could raise the rest just a tiny bit more. The reason why I'm doing that is because when I get these up here and I poke these in to make that mark, these stand a lot better chance of not getting caught in there if you use these in the trailing mode. If I would have left the tool rest in the same height that I had for the gouge and they were going up like this, these can easily get caught in there. So I want these to be lined up more in the trailing mode. And then what I do is I try to sight in the best that I can, as to on center. We can see that that's not quite on center, that's not quite on center, that looks pretty good. I'm going to then pull it away from there and turn it on, and then I'm going to push only the point closest to me in there, and that's going to transfer the mark over. I only want to do the point closest to me, because if I touch this one and back, the motion of the lathe is going to pick that up and smack me in the knuckles with it. So, and with your first mark, you're either going to get it right on, or it'll show you how to move for the second one. So I'm going to try to get it a little bit off on purpose just to demonstrate that, show you what you'd have to do to move it over for another one. Is this, I don't know, is anybody in the audience benefiting from the more kind of beginner stuff like this, or, okay, cool, yeah. Yeah, all right. Just making sure, I didn't want to, if we've got all advanced turners out there, I didn't want to have a room full of people saying, yeah, we know, Chris, get on with it. But anyway, so, again, I've got that lined up. Let's say this is where I thought the center was. I'm going to just hold down here on the point closest to me, push that in, and then what I do is I turn it off, and I see how close I got. With the lathe off, I hold the dividers up here and I try to put the legs in both sides. If I got it right on center, both legs of the divider would have dropped right back down. But if you don't get it right on center, there's nothing to worry about, because that's just going to tell you which way you need to move to get it right on center. We can easily see that from here. We just got to move these dividers over here a little bit and make a second mark, and that's going to result in this being right on center and transferring our measurement over. So everybody follow that? Any questions on that? Cool. All right, so I'm just going to turn that on and do another one. Again, only touching the point closest to me. So hopefully that got her done. We'll put these back down there. Yeah, so that second one's right on. So, again, don't be worried about using these to transfer your mark. You're either going to get it right on the first time, or you're going to be off on the first one, and that'll inform you how to move and hopefully get it on the second one. Or maybe the first time you try this, it takes you 3 times, and that's not the end of the world either. So now that we're kind of pretty much in the position with the rest for what I need for my next tool, I'm going to use a square scraper to go in there and hollow out where I want that mortise to be. This is, on my square scraper, you can see the tip of it looks like it's angled a little bit, and there's nothing special about that angle. That's just kind of how these wind up being after a few sharpenings, because on these I sharpen both the front edge and the left edge. Here's a view of the bottom of it so you can see that. The reason why I'm sharpening the left edge, and this is kind of more so for box making. I use the same tool for fitting the lid flange in box making, but the general principle applies to making this mortise too. If you look at this drawing up here on the board, the grinding that side bevel, what that does for us is when I come in here and cut with that top corner, and I'm going to be cutting with the front of it, pushing down in there. I mean, in other words, I'm not cutting with the side for anything that I'm doing, but the reason for grinding the side bevel is to give me this clearance right here. If I didn't grind the side bevel and have that, what would happen is, especially on a thicker square scraper, you'd have this whole side coming on here, and this corner would be pushing you away when you're trying to use the top corner. So that's the reason for grinding these the way that I do, and they just kind of wind up angling themselves over time, because when you're holding it up to the grinder to do the, especially if your wheel on this side that you like to use, if you're holding it up there to do your side, you can't, get it quite, perpendicular on there. So That's a long way of saying when I hold this handle up there and start plunging down in there, it's gonna look to you like, you know, you might look at it and say, well, that's kind of weird. How come he's angling the handle out that way? And even though the handle's angled out that way, if we look at just the portion that I'm kind of using, it's lined up, you know, basically 90 degrees to the axis of the lathe. So I'll just go ahead and do that. I like to also, you know, so again, we're in the trailing mode. We want the back of the handle to be higher than the front when it's just right on center. I can maybe raise the rest even a little bit more, just a tiny bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Another thing I'm going to do is, like, as I go down in there to initially, like, take some material off, this is actually something I picked up from Keith Gottschall's demo last year about this time, is I'm going to just jiggle the handle a little bit like that, and that has the effect of, you know, I mean, you could just go straight down in there with the tool, but then, like, this whole ½ inch has to cut at once. If you give it a little bit of wiggle back and forth, it has the effect of, you know, like, first that half of the tool is cutting, and then that half of the tool is cutting, and then that half, and it just goes down in there a little faster, you'll see. So just something just like that. And once I'm going to go a little deeper than I want the mortise right now, so that I have some room to clean up that first bad mark that I made, so that that's not in the foot. If this were, like, this is probably about as deep as I'd usually go for a mortise. You know, it's about a 1/16 of an inch or so. But I'll go a little deeper just so I have room to clean up. And you'll notice that I've stayed away from my mark. I didn't go right down to my mark at first. I'm gonna focus on flattening off the bottom where the jaws are gonna touch first, and then I'll come back and I'll go up to my mark as a final thing. I'm leaving some material in the middle here too, so I can put kind of a decorative detail on that in a little bit. I do need to take a little bit off of that there though, so I'll do that now. Something like that. Flattening the bottom a little bit. So now what I'm going to do to get this final surface and give myself like a real nice crisp corner coming down that those jaws can hang on to good, I'm going to be lining up the scraper here. This one, I think I can get away with doing this in one pass. If you know, I get to this point and I've left myself a little bit more between what I've hollowed out and where my mark is, I'll take it in 2 bites. But what I'm doing, I'm not cutting with the side of the scraper here. I'm cutting with the top of it, and I'm going to be pushing in towards the bowl. I try to line up on my mark, and I try to go down, you know, just real smooth, all in one pass, and that's what gives me like a nice smooth surface on the side of this mortise here. As I'm doing that, I was kind of looking over there at the far edge. That kind of allows me to see what I'm doing. So now that I'm down to my mark, I'll flatten things off on the bottom here. Try to get this nice and flat, you know, so again, so that it sets nice up against the top of the chuck jaws. And again, I'm going maybe a little deeper than I normally would so that I have some room to take off that other bad mark on my foot there. Get some more of this out of the way. And yeah, that's looking pretty good. I'll turn it off here, and I always check this and see, you know, when I feel in there, I want to feel like a nice crisp 90-degree surface. If you don't feel a crisp surface in there, like if sometimes you'll be feeling, you can like really tell with your fingernail there's like a little bump there or something, or just something just doesn't feel right, then you want to go ahead and come back up here and repeat that step of starting on the top and going all the way down. Even though you'd be getting away from your ideal diameter by doing that, the trade-off is worth it if you didn't get that sidewall nice and crisp on your first try. But I think I did, so I think I'm happy with it. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and define the foot. There's lots of different ways you could do this. If you liked using the scraper, you can just start coming in from the outside with the scraper, just like that, you know, and just I'm starting to come over and define where I want the foot to be. So that's one way to do it, just with the scraper. I typically like to go back to the gouge for this, though. So I'll go ahead and turn this off, put my rest back down more like in gouge height, and I'll check and see if I got that at the right height for me, which, yeah, if I hold the gouge up, it looks like we're cutting right on center. So I'm going to go back to, well, the scraper is actually leaving a good surface there. Maybe I should have stuck with that. But just to show you all something different, I'm going to go back to that same technique that I used to level off the bottom, where I'm taking like a series of nibbles going across there, and I'll just start coming across with those and defining where I want the foot to be. If I want the foot to be a little deeper, I just come back here to the edge and start coming across with those. And then if you want a foot that has like a nice 90-degree corner to it, you gotta like roll the gouge a little bit as you come up into that final bit. I don't know if everybody saw that. I just rolled a little, because here I've got to have the gouge a little bit open so that sweet spot of the cut is revealed, and then I'm just rolling it to close a little bit as I come across that final thing to to get that nice 90-degree corner with the foot. I'm just going to do one more. You don't want to make your foot too small this way when you do these, or you might blow out when you tighten the chuck jaws. Although in this case, even if I made this a little bit smaller, I wouldn't do that because the middle of the mortise is deeper than the outside of this here. So there's actually more wood supporting the outside than it looks like. So then I'll just go ahead and level things off to, like I said, get rid of that extra mark that I made. Just doing some more of those leveling cuts. Yeah, good. I got rid of that extra little mark. Here I'm doing a little thing that I'll talk more about later called pushing the pull cut, where I'm just lined up a little bit like I'm doing a pull cut, but I'm pushing it instead. That's something you can do when you understand really well the dynamics of the pull cut. I'm just looking at things now. It's always a good idea in this step to, if you've got something like one of these nice little rulers, hold it up to your foot and make sure you're either totally flat, or like what I like even better is what I've got here, where it's just toed in ever so slightly. I don't know if you can see that from a top angle, just the foot's toed in just a little bit to where, just the outside of the foot is touching, I guess. Yeah, so good to check with that. I'm also checking that the middle here where I want to leave to make a little decorative detail is sitting lower than the foot. So both of those things are looking good. So I think I can go back to shaping the overall bowl. Any questions about any of all that? Felt like I went through pretty quick, but I...
Like a formula you use to know how big you should make a foot depending on how big the element?
Yeah, good question. In general, something like 1/3 of the diameter is a pretty good starting point. I was just kind of eyeballing this one. I had essentially for all the chuck jaws that I have, I had either that chuck I could have used, or I think my next size of jaws down is the smaller Vic Mark with the standard jaws here. So a lot of times I'm just kind of eyeballing things out of what all I have and deciding which one I think will look better. This one could have worked too, but I think it might have been like a little bit on the small side for this bowl, So that was my thought process in there. Yeah, but like in general, like 1/3 or so of total diameter is a good starting point if you don't, yeah. Any other questions? All right. Let's see. So we got that's all good for a while there. I'm going to go back to shaping. And now I can keep going with my shaping because I've got basically my my starting point and my ending point. At this point here, I might go ahead and level off the bit of the rough edge I've got, just so I can have the starting or the stopping point fully established up there. And what I'm doing for that is a push cut. So this one works by rubbing the tip bevel along that side there. The thing that I've been talking about the sweet spot of the cut always being just downhill of the tip, that still applies. So you put those two things together and you get a nice little push cut going across the side here, and I can level that off. Feels like I haven't gotten all the way down through there yet, so I'll do one more. And now what I want to do is I want to stop just short of going all the way through, going that way, because if I do, it's going to blow out the top edge, because there won't be any supported grain on the top edge. So I just turn around and come the other side from the top edge. I just switched hands there. If you didn't want to switch hands and you wanted to keep doing it right-handed, you could come over here like this. But the the point is we're just coming down from the top edge so that we're not blowing out the grain. See if I got all the way down through there. Oh, whoops, no, still got a few more spots to go, so we'll do a few more cuts. Just coming across here like this. Again, stopping before I blow all the way through there. Switch over to come in from the other side. And just like that. Hopefully that took care of it. Yeah, we're down to like all the way around there now. This would be like another place where, like this bowl may not need it, but if you had a more, outer level blank, you'd also want to, with that, basically that same cut, like that push cut like that, you want to come in from the top a little bit and do some leveling cuts just like that, so that you got all the way down around the top. And then now that we've done all that, we've done, the rim and the top and the foot and everything there, we've got our kind of, starting and stopping points. And from there, we just keep this Ogee curve profile going and connect all the dots. So I'm going to be going back to my pull cut with the handle dropped low to just keep that profile coming in there. We're getting into another place here that can be kind of a danger zone for a beginner or anyone really, and that's where it's tempting with the rest in this position to kind of keep reaching around over there and stick your gouge in here like that. And if you do that, you're going to hit the danger zone of the cut, which is the top part of the wing. Again, the sweet spot of the cut's always just downhill of the tip. If you start touching this part of the gouge to the workpiece, that's when you get one of those big catches that scares the heck out of you. So, a couple ways around that is if you are going to keep the tool rest in this position, you got to make sure to kick the handle way out here so that again, just close to the tip is touching. If I didn't kick that handle out and just from here, I just kept going like that, I'm going to be putting the danger zone in. Or what would be even better yet is if I move around a little bit for working on the bottom there and kind of keep the tailstock support the tool rest support right underneath where I'm working. So now I can keep coming around, developing that curve. It's looking pretty decent so far. A few things about developing a nice Ogee curve here. Again, what we're going for here is just a nice, there's the little corner of our foot there. We're coming up there like that. And then we're going to just be coming out real smooth like that. A lot of times people's first efforts on these will kind of wind up looking a little more like this, where it's kind of a little bit more of a kind of dumpy form, for lack of a better word. One of the things to think about, I don't know if this helps anybody, it helped that the last time I did this demo, is if you think about stretching this out more to where, like, if you draw a line from the corner up there, kind of down to where this isn't working out. I can turn this better than I can draw it. But the idea is like a line going like that, it either gives you like kind of like equal parts of the curve, what I call above and below the line, or you want like more of this curve above the line, as opposed to this sort of thing here. If you draw that same line, you've got like a lot of this part of the curve underneath the line. And I think that's one of the things that kind of contributes to some initial efforts when people first try this, looking kind of like more like that dumpier shape there. Another way of thinking about this is like you've got to be able to make a nice, just traditional salad bowl shape with the nice, fair curve from the foot to the rim. You got to be able to do that before you can do this. Because another way of looking at this is essentially like the dog dish bowl with a thing tacked onto the top of it, and this is a nice like flowing curve bowl here. So you got to like master the just regular bowl with a nice flowing curve first, I think. I don't know. So hopefully those are some helpful considerations for good form here for you. Anybody have any questions about that? Or, the best thing for form, and I've studied with Jack Vessery for 5 weeks at this point. I was his student for a couple weeks, and then I got to be his assistant 3 times. And the thing that he always talked about was just, whatever you want to focus on, just turn like a bunch of outside forms, like get yourself some greenwood or some poplar, pine, something you don't care about, and just turn a bunch of outside forms without even worrying about hollowing. That's kind of the best thing you can do for form practice. Just to really start locking in on that. So I'll go back to developing this curve here. Trying to keep the handle of the gouge nice and low, so I'm getting a nice finish cut.
Excuse me a question.
Yeah.
So if you had a bunch of deeper holes, twice the thickness of that wood, would you just make the center smaller? Keep that curve in place? Otherwise, you're going to get, your example of the four-way.
I don't know that I'd necessarily make the center smaller. Here's an example of one that's a little bit thicker. I think this one started off as a 2.5 inch, almost a 3 inch thick piece of wood. Some of that got taken off there, of course, in the process, but you can see where this was quite a bit thicker than that one, and the center on this one's actually bigger. So I think the thing that will help with that problem is making sure, again, that you can, when you first start making this, just think about the bottom part of the curve. Like as you first start doing this, you just want to make this as though you're going to make like a salad bowl with that curve coming up from foot all the way to rim. And then once you've got that established, you kind of turn over a little bit. I think that's another way people kind of talk themselves out of good form on this, is they overthink what part of the process they're in, and they're worried about this part of the curve here when they're cutting this part. So if you start making this nice and round, and this starts looking good without even worrying about that, it's kind of easy from there to turn into that. But no, I guess to answer your question, I wouldn't. Well, so some of it's like selecting the right proportion blank too. I wouldn't make one this same diameter twice as thick as this one necessarily. That would lead to something other than what I'm doing. Yeah. So that's. I think it could still be successful, but I have more experience doing kind of these shallower, wider ones. I don't know. Those are some random thoughts about that. Was that helpful at all, or kind of get to what you're? You could, I suppose you could, yeah. If you were, I think I see what you're saying now. If you had one twice as thick as this, and everything else being equal, same diameter, twice as thick, maybe you would make the bottom a little bit smaller, and then that would kind of wind up being more like one of those kind of tulip type forms, So that's a good thought too. Yeah, a lot of different ways to get to the same place here for sure. So I'm just coming across there, just kind of finalizing this shape. At this point I'm looking at things. I've got like a little knuckle, a little interruption in the curve right there. So I want to get rid of that. And do a little bit more getting rid of that. I'm getting towards the end of this one here, so we're going to pretend like I sharpened my gouge. I just switched to another one with the same profile. I can go over how I sharpen if anybody wants to see that. It's nothing fancy. It's just, I just use the Wolverine jig for the most part. Actually, I don't know if I like the profile in this new one quite as much as the other one. I thought it was the same, but not quite. Let's see. So just kind of taking a minute there to look at that profile. I'm wanting the rim to be about half as thick as it is, so I have a few more cuts to go here. Again, just coming along with the handle drop nice and low, paying attention to rubbing the bevel, the sweet spot of that cut, and just coming around there. And you can see how I was moving from the hips. You know, I started off here, you get to that point, and then you kind of unwind when you come back and do the other part of the curve. That's kind of what it feels like to me, kind of why it reminded me of Tai Chi. It feels like coiling and uncoiling. There's at least one guy in the audience that came up to me and said he did Tai Chi too, so it's that analogy is helpful to at least one person tonight. If there's not more of you should go take a Tai Chi class. All right, that's looking pretty good.
So are you trying to make the convex and the concave elements, are they about the same length, I guess?
Yeah, I usually go about half and half, though that's another thing you can play around with, you know. I mean, this particular one wound up being, you know, like, yeah, about the first half of that bowl there is the convex shape, and about the second half is the concave shape, and that's how a lot of mine wind up. But that's definitely something you can play with, you know, and try different proportions. Like maybe you do one where it's like, you know, 2/3 of the curve is the first convex part and only flares out a little bit at the end. How that would change things if I did that, if I did more like a 2/3, 1/3 proportion, that would give me, like, all other things being equal, a less wide rim. So that's one consideration there. Just want to make one more little tweak on this before I go on. This curve on the bottom here could stand to be smoothed out a little more. And I'll practice what I preach and get the tool rest in a more advantageous position for the actual part that I'm working on. But yeah, just coming across there with a real light pull cut, doing a final shaping on that. That looks pretty good now. I'm pretty happy with that shape. I don't know if the camera's picking that up pretty good. So yeah, that's looking pretty good. Of course, you know, I've got a few little ridges there, so if I wanted to, I could do like a little bit of shear scraping to try to get down through some of those ridges, which of course shear scraping is with the gouge, you know, rolled over pretty much all the way to closed, and then I'm opening it up just enough to reveal the bottom wing. And for whatever reason, shear scraping tends to work a little better going backwards. So, you know, most of the time on a bowl, we're cutting from the foot to the rim. When we shear scrape, which the bevel's not involved with this cut now, and if you do it right, you're getting these little teeny tiny wispy shavings. This is great for just going down through some final ridges and stuff before you sand. I don't think I'll sand the outside on this tonight. Probably nobody wants to like breathe a bunch of dust while I sand, but that's a pretty good surface there already without even any sanding. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go back over here to the bottom and put my little detail in that I like to put on the bottom of these. How are we doing on time?
We've got over 40 minutes, over 45 minutes.
Oh, well, I'll get a second one of these done then. You know, no, I hope, you know, maybe I don't. Yeah, well, I might have some time to get into the coloring then. So next I'm going to use, this is a Thompson tool that I think is their 1/2-inch detail gouge, and it's the grind. It came from Al Sturt, so it's the grind that he likes to put on it. It's really great for putting little beads in. You know, you can do the thing where you go up the whole side of the bowl and put beads in. I'm going to do that just on this little kind of medallion on the bottom here. And yeah, so it just kind of comes up like this here. Go like that with it. It kind of works in like a rolling up and down motion. So it's like 1/2 of the bead kind of rolls down like that, and the next one rolls up like this. So kind of roll down, roll up over to the next one, and then roll down, something like that. You know, only got room for a couple beads in the middle of this one, but it gives a nice little detail for when somebody turns your bowl over. I've got to lower the tool rest a little bit, and since it was so close to the work, I will go ahead and turn it off before I lower the tool rest, which is a good idea anyway, but especially when the rest is that close to the work. So now there we go. Now I'm in a position where I can reach this into the center. So I mean, this gouge, even though it looks different, the principles that I explained up there are still the same. We think about which way we're going to roll it, and the sweet spot of the cut's always on the downhill side, just below the tip. So that sort of thing will like keep you out of trouble with any gouge that you work with. Do just one cut coming back just like this, just to flatten down the very middle a little bit. That'll be good enough for a demo bowl. A little detail in the middle there makes it nice. So let's see. Yeah, I think I'm ready to turn it around. Before I turn it around, I want to just do one more check, make sure I'm happy with that sidewall there, happy with how flat it feels. Because of course, anything like that, I got to correct it now before I turn it around and put the chuck on. One more check like this to make sure that the foot's going to sit nice and not hit that little detail in the middle. Question over here.
When you do the mortise, you said that at 90 degrees you don't worry about beveling.
Correct.
Match your job.
Nope, never have worried about that. I just my mortises look just like this here. That's what it's going to look like. If there's any angle inside there, it's purely accidental, and I find that again paying attention. What's far more, especially on a tenon, I will pay attention to the dovetail angle quite a bit more. But for one of these little shallow mortises here, the main thing is making sure that's nice and flat across the bottom to sit on the top of the jaws, and that you're at your true circle diameter. And this one should hold just fine. This is like a lot. There's still a little bit of the shield left here in case it doesn't. I didn't move the tool rest like quite all the way over here. So. So that, this one's a good, I mean, this is over 1/8 of an inch thick. This is like a really, really deep mortise for me, so hopefully it'll work after saying all that, that'd be embarrassing. All right, so I'll put the lock on, get my wrench, take this faceplate off. And again, for taking something on and off, it's always best to just hold on to it by the bottom and spin the hand wheel. That way you don't have to worry about when it's coming off the end there and drop it. And then we'll just come over here, take the faceplate off. The screws that I like to use are the SPAX screws. These are number 8 by 1 1/4 SPAX screws. And for those of you, I mean, a lot of people probably are already in the know on that as far as that goes too. But for those of you that aren't SPAX, SPAX, they're available at Home Depot and Lowe's and everything. I like them because the first little bit of the threads has little teeth in it, so they're self-tapping. You can get away with just screwing them right in on most domestic hardwoods. You don't have to start worrying about pre-drilling until you get up to something like a purple heart or something like that. And even then, sometimes you can get away with it. These are, I believe, number 8 by 1 1/4. Is what I most commonly use, and they come in a few different styles. These are the flathead one. You kind of want to match the style to your faceplate. These are flathead with a little taper on them. So this particular faceplate has little tapered holes in it that they go on into. You can get like the round top and flat bottom ones too. It's nice to get yourself a collection of like various ones like that going, so you'll have some that match any faceplate. If you're wondering, if you happen to notice this here when I turn around and start going, how I've got like a little bit of a hole in the middle of this bowl, the only reason for that was these particular faceplates. These are from the Canadian company RG Wood. They've got pretty good deals on faceplates. The only problem is on the Powermatic lathes, at least the B that I have at home, when you get these down all the way to where they mate with the surface there, the spindle sticks through a little bit there. So the easiest way I found around that is on any bowls that I use this particular faceplate on, I just go over to my drill press and drill out a little hole to accommodate the spindle poking through that faceplate a little bit. So nothing terribly special about the hole in that bowl. Same thing with my chuck here. When I put it on, I'm going to hold on to the bottom of the chuck and turn the hand wheel so that we don't cross thread anything. When I get it all the way down there, There we go. Put my wrench back over here. Find my key for the chuck. There it is. And of course, as I'm putting this on, I want to get the tool rest and everything out of my way. If there's any little pieces of wood dust or anything down in the corner there, want to get those out. And then, as I'm putting this on here, you want to take it right in the middle there and push it that way. And sometimes I'll even turn it like that a little bit as I go to make sure that we're bearing against the top surface of those jaws. I think that looks pretty good. All right, so that should be good to go. We'll turn it on for the moment of truth here. And nice and concentric like that is what you want to see. So we're all ready to go there. Get this moved over here. Get my tool rest in the right position. Looks like we're in a good height here. And of course, I'm just going to be doing, on the inside of a bowl, everybody's always doing push cuts for the most part. One thing that looks like I could be a little bit lower here. One thing that I like to do to my gouge for the inside of the bowl, and I may have to step over to the grinder and do a little bit more of this, but this one looks pretty sufficient right now. You'll notice that there's like a smaller, if they can get in there, there's a smaller secondary bevel on this gouge, and all that's doing is I just took a little bit of meat off of the heel of the gouge so that it turned the corner, when we get to making the curve inside here. And that's if you're using the Wolverine to sharpen, just after you sharpen the primary bevel, you can tap that arm in a little bit, and that'll give you your secondary bevel. I usually wind up just freehanding the secondary bevel, something like that on the grinder, because the wood never really knows what angle the secondary bevel is, so it doesn't really matter. So anyway, we'll just go ahead and turn this on. Just start hollowing things out here. It's going to be going like this here. So again, going back to the theme of the night about how gouges work for the benefit of new people, I've got the gouge rolled over this way, so that means the sweet spot of the cut's going to be right there where my fingernail is, just downhill of the tip. That'll keep you out of trouble 100% of the time. So sweet spot of the cut just downhill of the tip. I'm rubbing the tip bevel along where I just cut. So what that means is as I work on the inside of a bowl, the handle's going to start way out here, and we're going to be pulling it way back like that because we want that bevel rubbing down there the whole time as we go. So right here like this, coming around here. If you wind up with a little bit extra in the middle like that, back up and take it out in 2 or 3 bites. You can't just kind of plow through something like that with a big heroic bite. I tend to hollow mostly like this, where I've got the bevel, rolled over and pointed away from me the whole time. I mean, I've seen inside bowl hollowing more like that, where people will have the flute, pointed straight up, and you can do that too, but it's this way here with the flute, like rolled over and pointing away from you the whole time. That tends to be more successful, especially for, beginners. It's definitely less prone to a catch. Another thing that's going on here that you'll notice is like there's a little bit of arc to the gouge path there. You're going to see me start kind of horizontal here like this. As I come down, the gouge arcs up a little bit, and then it arcs back down towards center. That's another thing going on. A lot of times I forget that I'm even doing that, but students have mentioned it in class enough times that I know to mention it now. So yeah, so far so good on that. Just keep going. Any questions about inside cuts or what I'm doing? Or all right, it looks like everyone's still awake. Most of the audience is still here, so I must not be doing too bad. Just going across here. Feels like the tool rest is maybe still just a little bit too high for coming across the middle there. So lower it just a little bit. Keep on going in there. It's a little bit of a compromise because if we got the tool rest exactly where we wanted it to be for the middle, it'd be kind of a little bit too low for this cut entering on the side here. Trying to go all the way down there in one nice smooth motion, get a nice curve. And you know, of course, with a piece of wood this shallow, we're going to check a little bit as we go to make sure I'm not going to make a funnel. I did bring a backup bowl, you know, so if that does happen, there's still a chance of getting one done really quick. But anyway, you know, I'll just put a pencil there in the middle, close one eye, and bring that measurement back up to the outside there. And oh yeah, I've got quite a bit more left than I thought I did. I do have to keep in mind that the mortise is a little bit deeper than I'm used to, so that could get me. I'll have to watch out for that. Sometimes when people are first starting this, they'll have trouble with this point of the cut right here, where, you know, like you see me just starting the cut and going for it. A lot of times people will get kind of dragged back like that when they try to enter the cut. If that happens to you, what you can do is you can roll the gouge all the way over to closed, bring it up to horizontal, and then if I'm looking down from the top here, the gouge kind of forms a point, and I can just stick that point in there and make myself a little shoulder to start with. Then I can go ahead and open it up and go for it, and making that little shoulder first will make it so it can't skate back anymore. I mean, if you're able to just enter the cut without doing that little shoulder, then don't worry about it. But sometimes that's a useful tip for if people keep getting kind of grabbed by it right there. Need a little more speed here. I'm at 1850 if anyone's curious. Well, this is kind of another good thing to talk about here too. You know, like sometimes if you got like a little spot that you're trying to work on, like let's say that I was going to leave this one a little chunky, which I don't think I am, but let's say that I was, and I like that curve, but there's like a little spot in here like that. Another cool thing that you can do when you get a little more familiar with the gouge and everything is you can roll it all the way over to closed, and you can rub the heel along it backwards like that and feel little bumps, and then when you come back over your bump, you can open it up and go for it. So I don't have any little bumps right now. We'll have to use this bump here as a demonstration. Like I'm coming backwards there like that with the gouged all the way closed. I'm not in danger of catching or anything, but I'm rubbing that bevel backwards. I can feel myself come off of that. Then I open it up and go for it. You know, and you can actually do that backwards rubbing all the way through here if you want to just kind of feel out if there's any bumps or anything that you have to take care of there. Got a little greedy with that cut. Hope I don't go through the bottom or anything. You know, so now I've got some of those bumps to smooth out that I was talking about, that I can kind of go backwards here. Yeah, like right there, I can feel myself kind of come down off of one, then I go ahead and open it up, smooth it out. Same thing, there's another little one, go down off the bump, open up, smooth it out. I don't think I'm in danger of going through yet. We'll just see here. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's easy to know when it's too far. Trying to. Oh yeah, I've got more than I think. So I'm trying to leave this rim wide enough to potentially do some coloring quickly here. So sometimes like if I don't want to make the rim any smaller than it already is, and I guess we're to the point where I could move the tool rest inside the bowl a little bit here too. Yeah, that's always good to do when you get enough of the bowl hollowed out. Go ahead and move the tool rest inside there and keep it underneath what you're doing. I'm going to lower it down a little more because it last few passes across the middle there, it felt like it was a little too high. Always give it a test spin after you move it, especially when you're moving the rest inside the bowl. Make a few more cuts here. Oh, and so what I was saying about the rim here is, like, let's suppose, like, for the proportions of the bowl, this is how wide I want to leave the rim, but I want to keep hollowing out more of the middle. What I can do is start undercutting a little bit, you know, so if I come way over here like this, start coming in like that. I think that might be good enough for hollowing. I mean, you all are getting the idea with hollowing. And most of the time I don't scrape on the inside. Most of the time I do, you know, kind of just like what I've been doing there. I just am, you know, pretty fussy about getting the curve just right. I take advantage of that, you know, backing up and feeling the bevel to feel where there's any bumps technique quite a bit. Feels like I could make one more cut in the middle to just make things a little bit better. Get that just a little better. It's famous one more cut time. All right, I made it. So, I mean, that for me would be ready for sanding. Of course, if you're having more trouble with ridges, and sometimes I do have more trouble with ridges, this has been like some real nice cooperative wood. You can always go to something like a negative rake scraper and get in there and smooth those out. I'm not going to do that because at this point this would leave a worse surface than I have. So I'm going to come back out to working on the rim here. If you were working on like a bigger bowl, something with more mass, or like wood that you were afraid was going to move around a little more, you'd want to do this next step that I'm going to do in terms of shaping the rim, like before you get it all hollowed out, because, you know, the bowls get much bigger and stuff, and you hollow out the middle, and all of a sudden you come back to work on the rim, the rim can be shaking around on you. But this one seemed pretty stable, so I was pretty okay with leaving it until this last bit here. But now what I'm going to be doing to shape the rim, what I want to do, I don't know if you saw in the drawing there, but I like to put like a little bit of a curve in the rim. I'm exaggerating here, but it's nice if the top of the rim has a little bit of a curve to it as opposed to just being flat across. That's kind of boring. You know, flat's kind of boring. I think a curve's nice. You know, like just a straight line going in can be kind of cool too, but I like a little bit of a curve on the rim. So what I'm going to do is, for this half of it, I'm just going to do a pole cut coming towards me. Just like that. It's a pull cut with the handle dropped down real low. This is one where you really have to pay attention to that thing that I was talking about the sweet spot of the cut is just, you know, right downhill the tip. If you let the upper part of the wing engage in this is going to blow the whole bowl up at this point. So then what I used to do is I would do like a pull cut on that half of it, and then I'd turn things over and I'd do a, you know, push cut for the interior portion of the curve. And that still works just fine too. But what I've gotten to is, you know, like once you have a really good understanding of how this pull cut works here, you can just turn around and push the pull cut. I can just push it in that way, and I can just go back and forth both ways. And, you know, so it's essentially traditional push or pull cut this way, keeping the gouge in the exact same position. And now I'm just pushing it. It's just kind of back cutting, I guess, or, you know, again, I refer to that as pushing the pull cut. Yeah, haven't heard anybody else but me talk about that. At least that's.
Yeah, could you, for our beginners here, because I covered that too, is when you're looking at that from here, you can't really tell where your handle is. You know, you had mentioned earlier, keep that handle low.
Yeah, definitely nice and low here. I'm going to switch over to another sharp gouge, same profile. Yeah, so what Keith is talking about, to get this nice, you know, tear out free surface here, yeah, a big component of that is I'm keeping the handle I mean, like, it's even lower than a 45-degree angle. It's nice and low so that that edge is interacting with the wood like that. Is that what you were wanting me to get to, Keith? Maybe a little. It was already down a little bit because it was kind of optimized for cutting in the middle, which is lower than I would have liked for the. But yeah, let's hold it up here and see. Yeah, so I guess if I'm holding the gouge exactly horizontal, the tip's coming in just a tiny bit below center. So yeah, you're right. The rest would be maybe a little bit lower than you'd otherwise be thinking of. But then that puts us in a nice position here, and you can see I'm just taking just a tiny light cut on this rim here. Just putting that curve shape in. So again, that part of it coming back towards me is the same push cut that everybody's used to. This is the part that can be tricky, where we take the same position and we push it. And you just have to be real careful when you're doing this. Dale Larson saw me do this one time when I took his class, and he goes, "That's a risky cut." And I mean, I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess it is, because yeah, like if you engage the wings and not the sweet spot just below the tip here, it's gonna definitely blow things up. But I think I'll quit while I'm ahead before that happens, and we can cover a little bit of color on this rim here. I mean, I'll probably take this home, and since I've got the mortise in it, I'll probably hollow it out a little more because it's a little bit chunky right here still. But I think everybody gets the idea on hollowing, and you rather see a little bit of the coloring technique, right? Is that okay? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, we might be able to do the entire coloring technique then. So I'm just gonna. I will have to do a little bit of sanding for this part, but I've got my little improvised dust collection for that, which I might have to slide the headstock a little bit so the dust collection fits on here. There we go. Get this out of the way. This isn't so much dust collection as yeah, well, I'm gonna blow it that way, you know, just so I'm not sitting here like inhaling all of, yeah. So some like this, Don. Is this what you're saying? All right. Yeah. Let's see. So. I'll just do some regular sanding real quick first, you know, because before you do any dyeing or anything on the rim, you want that to be sanded up to your finished surface. So I've just got these Klingspor gold rolls. For all of you that haven't discovered the Klingspor gold rolls yet, I'd encourage you to get some next time you need some sandpaper, and you'll never want to buy anything else again. The only thing, I can't say enough good things about it. The only thing that's not good is like when you turn these rolls over here, it doesn't print what grit it is very often. So as you're tearing your pieces off, if you don't get lucky and get a piece like that has what grit it is on there, you got to write it down so you can keep track of it. Oh gosh, I'm getting lucky so far, both pieces. 120, 180, do some 220. That one I've got to write down what we've got here. Is this thing in the way of the camera? I guess I could put it on a stool or something, you know. We'll see how it goes when I get going. Yeah. So this won't take long. So I got a half hour left. I'll be done with this in 20 minutes tops. You know, done with the sanding. No, I'm just kidding. I won't spend as much time as I usually do sanding things. So let's see here. Maybe I'll grab this stool. I can put my little improvised dust collector here like that. Get it out of the way of your camera shot. On figured maple, most of the time I just go to 320. Sometimes on figured maple I'll do 400, and that's as high as I ever go on an initial sanding. You'll see that when I do the dye job, there's some higher grit abrasives that come out as steps in between the dyes. But for most of my sanding, I don't take things past 320 or 400 if it's really nice wood. But most of the time, just 320. I think going up beyond that is in many cases a waste of time. I know that there's a lot of people that'll disagree with me on that, especially these days. You know, it's gotten popular on the internet to say like, oh, well, I sanded to 1,000 grit. Well, I sanded to 6,000, you know, and I always look at that and say, you know, if you guys did what you were supposed to do with the grits up to 320, you wouldn't have had to take it up to 1,000. You know, most of the, you know, again, this is kind of just my opinion. Maybe somebody will show me something, or I'll try it out someday and be proven wrong. But I think that the only benefit that a lot of those people that are proponents of the real high grit sanding are getting is it's forcing them to spend more time on it. And you can get to the same place if you just spend adequate amounts of time on your, you know, 120, 180, 220, 320. I think. I could be wrong. I mean, there's exceptions. Like I don't do any work with like resin and stuff like that, and I know that changes the game quite a bit. Did that? Right, yeah, not initially anyway. In between coats of dye, I'll use a 500 grit and an 800 grit Festool, and then I'll use the Norton gray non-woven pad for coats in between dyes, just to like sand back and get to the whatever profile I'm after. You know, I forgot. What's that? This is 826 now. I turned it down a little bit from the 1800 that I was at. You know, the Festool would probably be pretty nice for this too. I just really like the Klingspor gold rolls. You know, if you haven't tried them, you should try them. Klingspor, you should give me some free stuff for mentioning your gold rolls. But no, I mean it's really nice stuff. You know, it's cloth backed, really flexible, lasts a really long time. But no, I mean the lower grits of the Festool stuff would work. Festool is also very high quality, so you wouldn't find any objections from me on doing that. Let's put the light over here and see how good I'm doing. You know, again, I'm not doing quite as good as I normally would, because you all want to get on with it and see the dyes, but I do have to get it, you know, good enough to apply the dyes. Maybe just a little more time with the 220 here. And this is how I always do the dye on these bowls. Sometimes people will ask me like, oh, do you do the dye first and then cut down through it or anything like that? And no, you'll see, I always do it just like this. I get the bowl totally done first, and then I just put the dye on very carefully. And if I mess up and it's not quite very carefully, I can always, you know, sand it back out or cut it back out. But a lot of times when I'm making these, I've got like a, you know, series of at least 4 or 5 of them going for like an art show or something, and I don't want to, you know, if I did the thing that I've heard people talk about, where you know, save the cutting the inside for last and cut down through the dye, that'd slow down my process too much. And the one time I tried it, you get like capillary action bleed through anyway. So you're gonna, you know, if you do that thing where you put the dye on the rim and then you cut down through it, you're gonna see like a bunch of little fuzzies there anyway. That's the capillary action of the wood soaking it up. And I think I'm actually able to get it a little neater this way. So that's, I think that rim is sanded good enough to demonstrate this. You know, normally I'd do a little better than that, but you'll have to use your imagination somewhat. So I've got my green trans tint dye and my blue trans tint dye. So we're going to work on doing a little blue-green gradient, kind of like on this bowl, where I'll do like some blue and some green and then a gradient in between the two of them. The numbers that I have written on these, this is like, I've been experimenting around with finding like what I like is the ideal dilution of this, which I think for a start, they give you this stuff in like, on the package, they give it to you in like ounces of dye per ounces of water, or, you know, alcohol or whatever you're going to use. I just use water. And I think what I've gotten to is roughly like a double concentration that what they recommend, but these numbers here, and I weigh this out on a little kitchen scale. I've got 15 grams of dye to 130 grams of water is what this one is. So I'm using a little bit, well, quite a bit heavier concentration than they recommend, just in the interest of moving things along here, not only for tonight, but just for when I'm doing this for real too. I don't want something that already takes like 5 layers of dye to take 10, you know. So I had these blue towels cut up into quarter sheets, you know, and this will be a successful demo if I manage to not kick this over sometime tonight. But I'm gonna just dip the paper towel down in there. I tell you what, I'll just put it on the floor here, and then if it. Oh, I'm not going to get extra on the bed. I don't think. I mean, we could if you want to, but usually it wipes right off with mineral spirits if you do. Hope that's true. Anyway, yeah. So I just start wiping that on like that, you know. Just took that, and you know, and then I used to not do the outer part of the edge, but I found that this looks a little better with the outer part getting a little bit of dye too. These are the trans tint wood dyes. They're available both here and at Rockler's. They come in little jars about that big, 2 or 3. Yeah, I think they come in 2 or 3 ounces. They can seem kind of pricey when you first see them, but especially if you're not doing this on like a production basis, each color is kind of like a lifetime supply for a wood turner almost by the time you dilute it. So they are kind of something that requires a little bit upfront investment, but they wind up being a pretty good value by the time they do like a ton of bowls. I think I'm on my second one of blue, because I've done like a lot of the blue. And the rest of mine, I'm all still on the same color or the same tube, not tube, little bottle. Yeah, I guess I can turn that off in between sanding. I was kind of enjoying it though. But so anyway, there's what I do when I'm going to build up a gradient. I just put some blue on that side, and then we'll put some green on. Oh, there we go. I forgot my one thing is usually I have like a block that I use to kind of like dab this as I go if I want to control things, but I'll just use my extra bowl for that purpose. So we'll put some blue on that side, some green on the other side. Gotta remind me to move my paper towel before I turn the fan back on. That will get some dye all over. But yeah, just getting some green out of there.
Can you do this with the lathe running?
I suppose you could, but I feel like I have more control just doing it like this. I'm pulling the line towards me, and you can see I'm getting a real clean line there, right? Little bit went down there. I could sand that out later if I want to, but I'm able to get a pretty clean line just by doing like this and controlling how much liquid is on here, and also you get a lot of control. I always pull towards me with this. I'd never push it, so that's just like a general art thing. You can usually like pull a line better than you can push it.
Does the color go on differently if you use alcohol instead of water, and is there a reason why you use water instead of alcohol?
I don't know, and no. I just I started using water and got good results with that. I mean, I guess the reason why I was motivated to use water as opposed to like DNA is just like a little bit less toxic, right? I might try Everclear at some point. Then you can get into the one for the bowl and one for me kind of thing, if you're using Everclear. But no, I mean that's kind of something that I've still been meaning to do, to be honest, is experimenting around with DNA and saying, hey, how do I like that? Does that work different? Or yeah, Keith, you had something?
I was just thinking, if you use
Oh, that could be too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's something I haven't tried, so that could be something that, you all that are watching this here tonight could give that a try, and, that could be, you'll have to let me know if it works better. But what I'm going to do now, and of course this is the stage of this where right now it looks horrible, and you're like, oh my God, what have I done? I've ruined the little bowl that I made, But you'll see as the layers get built up, it starts looking a lot nicer. So I'm gonna the fest tool that I like to use is this foam back stuff. So I've got that in 800 and 500, and then I've got the gray non-woven pad. So usually I start experimenting with the 800, and then I'll I might need to use like a coarser grit or a not as coarse grit. Turn my little improvised dust collection back on here.
Do you care if you have the unevenness of the dye that's on there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I will eventually, but like at this stage, because there's going to be like at least 3 layers go on here, so at this point I don't really, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely, it doesn't look very good the first like coat or two, but yeah, like as we go on here, I'll pay more attention to it. I'm also allowing a little bit of variability because I don't want this to wind up like just looking like like a stripe of green, stripe of blue. I want there to be like a little bit of blending. So some of that's intentional too, that I'm being a little chaotic with the application as far as that goes. So I want it to look organic, not. Yeah.
Even though I use alcohol commonly, I think the water base is a little bit more color fast.
Oh, is that right? Okay. That's some information on their website or something you were saying? Yeah. Well, that's good. I've been doing it right all along here then for color fastness. Yeah, no, that's good to know. So, I just sanded back a little bit there now, and then it's kind of just back to doing more of the same thing, if I can find.
What did you use to sand it? Was that the 500?
That was the 800 fest tool, was what I started with there. The 500 would be a little more aggressive. The 500 would have gotten me down to bare wood in more spots than just that one, I think. So, I mean, that's another one of the things you can play around with and, vary things up. You could do everything exactly the same. And 500 grit in between your coats will give you a little bit different than 800 grit would. And if I start building these coats up, and because I'm going kind of quicker than I usually do, if I start building these up and it gets kind of muddy, I might go to the 500 grit to take some down,
They're about 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. Now I'm really having to go fast. Gotta at least go fast enough to show you all the point this gets to where it starts to not look bad anymore, But I mean, you can see how it already starts to look a little better with the second coat there. You can see where the blue and the green are blending in there. Do some more green. A lot of this is just experimentation. You just have to do some of these and play around with different colors. Blue and green is what I have the most experience with, just because that's what I enjoyed when I started doing it. And then some people started asking about, hey, can you do that in orange and yellow? And I started doing those, and I really like those too. I do a series of wall hangings that some of you may have seen called the Ripples series, and that have little turned elements in them. And I also use the blue and green dye a lot in those. Whoops, this is getting a little sloppier with my line than I normally do here, just because I'm trying to go quick. But that can also be sanded out pretty easily. And here's where, so I might have a little spot there where I bring the green back a little more, and another little spot there, just to kind of play around and get more of that organic feel going where it's not going the whole way. But you can see where it's starting to blend in there. I think we got time for me to maybe sand down and do one more. Since I'm kind of liking how that is. Normally I'd let these dry a little bit more in between sanding times, but just for the sake of time here, what I might try is I might go up to my little bit higher grit. This is the gray non-woven pad from Norton. Make sure you get the Norton ones. They sell another brand here that isn't Norton, and they don't work nearly as well. So you got to go to Woodcraft or online and get the Norton ones. Whoops, I didn't turn this on. So I'm going to try the gray first because it's less aggressive. And I'll turn it off and see how I like that. That looks like it could benefit from just a quick hit of the 800, just to get things to blend up a little better there. And we'll go ahead and try to do one more coat here. If we got time for that, right, Don?
Yeah.
All right. So one more coat here.
Yeah, one more coat before the fine streak.
Yeah. On my final coat, I'll take my piece of scrap wood and kind of really like blot things out there, so there's not like a lot of extra material on the paper towel. I'll go ahead and put that on. Kind of same thing here. I might do some little places there where the blue encroaches on the green a little more, just to add some more interest to it. Make sure to get the side again real quick. That looks good enough. Get some green. You could do this with 3 colors too. You could have like a gradient that goes like a lighter green to a yellow to an orange. I've done like this green to blue to like a kind of a black on the outside of the blue is kind of nice. But yeah, you can definitely start combining more than 2 when you get into it. General artistic color theory is a good thing to look into if you don't have any background with that. Your color wheel and what colors are adjacent to each other on the color wheel and therefore will look good blended together. If you don't have the general like kind of 2D art background to have any information about that, that's a good thing to look up that would give you some more success with this. Maybe go back to just a little bit more blue on the edge here, just what I've got left on the paper towel. Let's get a little more in there. That's looking not too bad now. See, I told you it gets better with more coats. It looked terrible to begin with. You've always got to, when you're doing this here, you've got to be able to pass through the step where it's like, oh my God, I've messed the project up entirely. I spent all that time turning this little bowl, and now it looks terrible. You gotta be willing to kind of pass through that step. So I'm doing my gray non-woven pad here first. We'll see what that looks like. Usually on final coats, I just stick with the gray. And a lot of times, like even on final coats, even if I put like a couple more coats of dye on that, you're going to have like certain parts of the grain where it comes through and it's almost natural wood. And that's just, like I said, you wouldn't get rid of that feature on this piece of wood even with 2, 3, 4 more coats. You'd still have little points there. And I don't know, I think that just adds to it. So a little bit more sanding on the edge here. And I think we'll call that a day with this one. Again, I'd normally probably do more like at least 5 coats of dye, so you can see how just going back and forth a couple more times on that would just keep developing the overall richness of things. But I think you get the idea. So thanks again for having me out. Let me know if you have any more questions. And yeah, more questions up front here.
What do you put as a finish?
Most of my bowls I use the tried and true brand Danish oil. That's what's on all these up here. Like minimum 3 coats, 5 coats is even better if you have time for it. I hit it with the white Norton pad in between coats. And that winds up looking real nice, I think. That's what I usually use. There will be a little, like when you put any finish on top of this dye, like oil or whatever, there'll be a little bit of bleeding on the first couple coats. Like you'll start putting the oil on and the paper towel will look blue and green, so you want to like take this is always a good idea anyway. You want to take a little bit of your oil and pour it into a small bowl so you're not contaminating your whole jar. So I guess like the...
Problem with that color smearing on the inside or something?
No, I usually don't, because I'm usually kind of doing the same thing you saw me do, where I'm kind of carefully applying the oil, especially those first couple coats, and kind of pulling away from the line. So I usually don't have a problem with the oil smearing or anything. And then by the time you get up to the third or fourth coat or so, that it's usually like far less that's still coming off on the rag. So, any other question up here?
Was that just totally blue and the big one?
The big one is blue with a little bit of black on the rim. It's kind of a lot more subtle gradient, but there's like, actually, if you look at it closely, you'll see about halfway through some black starts, and that makes that one a lot more interesting than it would be with just the blue only. So yeah, so even on something like that looks like it's just one color, I'm usually trying to blend at least a second color in there somewhere in a subtle way. When I first started doing these, I just used one color, and that looks nice too. I mean, that's a good way to get into these, is just practice, just doing one solid color, getting it on there nice and neat, building up the coats, sanding in between it. That still looks nice, but these days I'm always doing a second color for the little bit of better interest. Yeah. Anything else? All right. Well, thanks again, y'all. It's always fun to come out.